Welcome to Tbilisi, where we're in the office of Georgian President Mikheil Saakashvili. Mr. President, thanks very much for being with us tonight. Can you tell us, at this moment, are the Russians any nearer to leaving your country?
Well, I think what Russians are now doing, they are trying to mislead the world opinion and, to claim that they fulfill the promise given to Nicolas Sarkozy, because they are regrouping from big urban areas like Gori to take strategic locations, like they've seized the town of Gori, which is basically removed from the road, but strategically it's very important. They claim that it is South Ossetia and should be handed over to separatist authorities. They are digging in near the port of Poti and doing fortification there, and even yesterday they proclaimed that they should have a new administration in town of Poti, and this is Georgia's main seaport and main gateway to the world. And they are continuing to destroy civilian infrastructure all around the country.
So what's the end game then?
I think the end game is, as they said from the beginning, to have very sensitive spots to continue to destroy my country, to undermine its government, to destroy its economy, to scare away Europeans and Americans, and to accomplish what they're here for, for basically ending independence of Georgia and getting rid of its government. So
you're not at all convinced then by the promises of President Medvedev that they really will leave?
Unless they withdraw from Gori, which they've seized, withdraw from Poti, reverse the results of ethnic cleansing which they are committing as we speak. Just thinking if they stay in town of Gori or not, for them it's more comfortable to leave, because in Gori they are in very hostile environment. It's an urban center. People are extremely aggressive towards them, and they cannot sustain long-term occupation of an urban area unless they go also after the capital. What they are doing now is they're trying to seize other places around, to widen the spots of their occupation, to widen grip over the main infrastructure of the country, and meanwhile to claim that we are just fulfilling our promise, when they basically are regrouping. They clearly said, under agreement with Sarkozy, they have to leave the country with their troops, what it envisages is some kind of vague formula about, temporary measures before arrival of international observer mission. The international observer mission is arriving within the next few days. But then Russians obviously claim that, they can have the strongholds in Abkhazia and South Ossetia, and they also have strongholds outside those traditional areas inside Georgia, and to control very sensitive economic and strategic points inside Georgia.
You mentioned a second ago Tbilisi and the potential threat to Tbilisi. Do you think that has now passed?
Well, if our army had not contained them for the first 48 hours, which took the world to wake up what's going on. And then only after that, President Sarkozy was first here to come, and the other European leaders and as well as Americans started to react in a very strong way. They would have long ago overrun Tbilisi, and then the world would have woken up and said, no, Georgia is gone, Tbilisi is gone, like Prague in '68 or Budapest in '56.
So are you encouraged then by the international reaction now? We just had this meeting of NATO in Brussels, which condemned Russia in very strong terms. Do you think the point has been reached now where the West understands better what Russia is,
yes,
and is learning how to react?
Yes, I think the West has consolidated. I think it has taken them much faster than time than say that they had to react, say, to Sarajevo or other areas in the Balkans. I think they understand clearly that Russia is a threat to them, not just only to Georgia. And I think in some ways they will roll back the aggression. Russia's goal from the very beginning was to find the world in the middle of controversy, blur the picture. Remember, they said 2,000 people killed in South Ossetia. That's why we went in. Today they are saying it's 130. And I'm sure that is also a total lie. But now can world wake up and see these guys were saying for all these days Georgians killed 2,000 people in Skin Valley, when there were not even 2,000 people, because they evacuated prior to their attack every child and woman from there. But, for 1 week, every Western news media was carrying down there on the screens. I could see 2,000 killed, genocide by Georgians. And now it's a total lie. And meanwhile, they killed lots of Georgians. Meanwhile, they cleansed all the villages, not ethnic Georgians. These were ethnically mixed villages. You know, it was not Georgian villages. It was these were villages run by local administration, headed by former South Ossetia.
But has Georgia since won the information war with Russia?
Well, look. It's not about information war, it's about carrying out the truth to the world. And the world's starting to open eyes and see, they can, you know, today I saw a very, very interesting analysis, I don't really read it, but there are so many parallels with Czechoslovakia in 1968. In 1968, they claimed that they went into Czechoslovakia to protect Russia's nationals. In 1968, they said we were there just to establish order, we'll leave, and in fact, they came there to kill democracy. And, you know, if you look at terminology they use now and they use then, it's one-to-one, except that, you know, geographic locations have changed, except that now they imitate that they are reacting to the way that the West reacted to Kosovo. One small difference. In Kosovo, there was real harassment of Kosovars by Milosevic, and while here we offered autonomy, language rights, everything to these people there locally. And the other thing is that the population of South Ossetia, where we didn't control, was 25,000 people, not 2 million people like in Kosovo. Russians don't care about these people. They don't know even where the place is. What they care about is to grab middle part of Georgia, have military stronghold there, control and terrorize Georgian population, and undermine the government, and basically lay foundation for some kind of restoration of what they think is their zone of influence, or even the Soviet Union.
You mentioned there Kosovo. Is Georgia in some sense being punished for NATO's bombardment of Serbia?
I think it's not about NATO's bombardment of Serbia. I think it's what they are trying to do. They are trying to play on some naiveties or some people saying, you know, we are just not doing anything irregular. So it has already been done. You know, they try to model their actions to imitate their actions of Westerners and to say we are doing the same, except that this is totally wrong. Different context, different circumstances, and you know, epochs don't change. But the fact is that in 1939, Stalin's Russia attacked exactly in similar circumstances Finland, took away Karelia, and then they attacked Hungary in 1956. Then they attacked Czechoslovakia in 1968, and then they attacked Afghanistan in 1979. And you know, these are the same tanks. This is the same techniques. This is the same brutality. I mean, people who operate now in our towns and villages, they are like taken from early 20th century. They are irregulars. They are badly dressed, badly fed. They are in the evenings. Almost all of them are totally drunk. They are aggressive. They are nasty. In some ways they don't behave like human beings. And this is the reality. And you know, they come. It's like interaction between civilized nation and uncivilized people. In some way, I don't say that Russia is uncivilized. I think these people that they brought in are totally uncivilized. And the way decisions are taken is totally uncivilized. And the point here is we have this interaction, and you really see how modern European nation is under attack from very brutal force.
What about, going back to NATO, what about your NATO aspirations? Do you feel that the creation of this NATO-Georgia Commission is going to accelerate Georgia's hopes for membership of NATO?
I think it's now up to NATO to remodel itself and to rethink totally what its principles are all about. Because it's obvious that you are getting now Russia that is brutal, that has crossed the lines or has nothing to lose, and that is euphoric about its brutality. And now they are trying to grab as much as they can, to loot as much as they can, to destroy as much as they can, because they think that they have the sense of impunity. They think they will get away with this. So, you know, when Czechoslovakia was attacked by Germany in 1930, after Munich in 1938, nobody would have criticized Munich if there had not been the whole string of tragedies in Europe, and then if then Second World War hadn't followed with this the biggest tragedy in world history. And so, and if people don't see that Georgia is only first episode or a long range of things that are coming, then, of course...
But do you think that point has now sunk in with public and leadership opinion?
I think
well?
Europeans have lots of historic experience.
East Europeans especially?
East and West, because I think... I don't blame Western Europeans. I warned Western European leaders that this was going to happen. I don't blame them for not, for not believing me, because it's hard to believe if you are civilized and if you are modern European that this is possible. You only think that horror movies are on the screen. Now, this is already possible. But the good news is that Europeans have lots of experience from history. And they've lived through Munich and Chamberlain saying, what the hell is Czechoslovakia, far away country of which we know very little. They've lived through Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. They've lived through Yalta and dividing lines and the Cold War. They've lived through Hungary, Czechoslovakia. They've lived through Russian aggression of, Soviet aggression of Finland. They remember all that. And they also know that if you succumb to evil once, it's not going to stop. It's not a rational beast, this evil. I mean, it thinks the more blood it gets, more blood it drinks, more blood it wants. And that's the problem.
But does it make sense for a country as small and as exposed as Georgia is to prod that beast in such a way as to make it start lashing out?
Look, the point is that we didn't prod it. The point is the very fact of our existence irritates Russian leadership so much. Because one thing should be realized. It wasn't about self-possession. Russians don't care about self-possession. Russian leadership thought that having such a country in their neighborhood, in their backyard, as they say, that has absolutely European political system, that has European way of life, non-corrupt government, people that act free, look freely, elite that is totally European type elite, political class. It's not only president, it's not a one-man show. Look at the ministers of the government, how they function. They are free people, they all speak foreign languages, they have Western education. Look at the whole new elite that emerged in Georgia. They saw it as mortal death, the threat for them, that something like this, without oil and gas, this country like Georgia could succeed in their backyard, despite all the principles they preach for the rest of the world. And not only succeed, but serve as alternative for transportation of oil and gas, transportation of goods, because we're building big railway from China to Turkey and then to Europe, to have free economic zones, to have prosperity. That's what they couldn't digest. It wasn't about Georgia, and that the country would also claim that we want to be.
You mentioned all those things, but is there something else here as well? Is there something perhaps that's personal between you and Vladimir Putin?
Vladimir Putin and people from his background cannot stand any expression of political freedom, whether it would be Saakashvili or anybody else here. That's the problem. That's the problem. It's not about personally. I never personally insulted Putin or anything. I mean,
you did call him Lily Putin.
Never.
No, it's a myth?
It's total myth. And it's the kind of myth they want to invent and believe. Because they want to also have personal justification why they are doing this or that. And the point here is following. It's not about us, our concrete expressions or words or indeed separate actions. It's about the whole way of thinking we have. That is totally unacceptable for these people. When I was first-year student in Kiev, I ran into trouble with KGB. And ever since, looks like I keep running into trouble with KGB. And the point here is that, the only tragedy is that, in '91, I thought these people were gone for good, and now they're back.
What about the role of the West in the mediation effort? Are you satisfied with the way it was conducted? What in particular the role of the European president now, Nicolas Sarkozy?
Look, Sarkozy did his best, but his maneuver was limited. But this only is viable as a ceasefire short-term agreement. As a long-term thing, fixing lines or having anything like Russian peacekeepers here, so-called peacekeepers, will never accept this. And I made it very clear to President Sarkozy and to every other European leader. We cannot have new dividing lines in Europe, and Europe cannot stand behind that. And I think yesterday at the Security Council, France and Americans joined forces in their resolution, and the Russians opposed it. And that's I think important, that Security Council of the UN will never legalize any forms of Russian occupation of my country. It's very important that this ceasefire agreement is a short-term effect in terms of getting out most of this couple of thousand tanks overall that they brought in, and in stabilizing or getting back situation in most of the Georgia's areas. But as I said, we are never reconciled with occupation of any single kilometer of this area of our territory. Europe should go after the assets of the people who try to squeeze, get hold of our territory. Look, if Sochi Olympics, why Putin was in a hurry to do it now? Because he thinks that he should do it way before Sochi Olympics, so that Sochi Olympics, before that people forget about the threat. But Europe should not forget. If they forget, then all of us are in trouble.
You say Georgia will never be reconciled to the loss of South Ossetia or Abkhazia, but the events of the last week have surely made your desire, the desire of Georgia to regain control over those areas, much more difficult.
No, I think the events of last week woke up the world, and it's no longer just Georgia's issues. It's a big international issue now. Georgia never had a chance to solve it on its own with Russia anyway. The point here is that, you know, it is not about Georgian internal issues. It's not homegrown separate. It's not like Basques of ETA organization, or it's not like Kurds of PKK in Turkey. No, this is not homegrown separatists. This is foreign-led proxies that basically claim masquerade as local separatists. So-called South-Ossetia's government, the one that was under Georgian control, was led by former separatists. The one with them, these were people who, you know, these were Russian generals.
But knowing that, do you not regret now taking the military action you did? Because surely the reaction was always going to be like that.
No, we respond. There was no option. We have Putin planned it a long time ago. This is date was exactly planned. They mobilized reservists. They mobilized the pilots we captured. They were pensioners, whom one of them at least, and one was killed, and we had his document. He was taken up from the streets of Moscow 4 days before invasion. So basically, it was like hour by hour planned by Putin. He evacuated the whole civilian population from the area, and now, look, we had two options: either not to fight back at all, and then they would have easily come to Tbilisi, or to try to contain them for 48 hours, try to resist before international community would wake up. If we had held on resistance for more than 48 hours in those areas around Skirvali, another column, there were two more columns coming, one from Abkhazia that came into Western Georgia, and the other one from other northern point we have with Russia, and there we didn't have enough forces to stop them. So my army was withdrawn only after 48 hours in order to save it. But meanwhile, we gained time. And there was no other option for Georgia. This was pre-planned, premeditated.
I'm afraid that's where we're going to have to end it. We've come to the end of the program. Mr. President, thanks very much indeed for being with us tonight.
Thank you for inviting me.
Good night.